components. The first being connection to place, to have a kinship with Aina. So Aina is land. Second, connection to community, to love and be loved, to understand and be understood. The third, connection to past and future, to have kuleana, a purpose in the world. And four, connection to your better self, to find and know yourself. And a lot of these principles, and you can consider the Native Hawaiian principles, holistic kind of thinking principles. It just makes sense. If you think about it, when we look into research or we look at like individuals, when we do therapy with them, or if we're trying to help them through a hard time, like connecting with them through social support, that could count as connection to community. Like, who are their community? Yes, they may not be close to their families, whatever circumstances, they may not be close to their neighbors or whatever, but is your definition of how you define your community. And then again, when it's connection to place, Native Hawaiians have a strong connection because a lot of land and other natural resources are familial. You know, there's this reciprocal relationship that is supposed to happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but that's what traditionally has been instilled in the culture, and how these natural resources such as Aina and Vai, water, can sustain us. And I mean, I don't think you need to be Hawaiian to understand, you know, the significance of water, you know, just how significant water is and land is, and being self-sustainable. And then going into connection to past and future. So how are we supposed to navigate this world if we don't really know ourselves and we don't know where we come from? Yes, there is always dependent. I'm not saying you have to know your genealogy or you have to know your great-great-great-grandparents, but as Hawaiian, having some sense of direction where you came from can help you lead you to the future. So like, whether these are goals that you have, whether it's you wanting to instill values with your children. So what purpose, like, how are you living your life in this world? And then connection to better self, finding yourself. So like, there's research, and I think like in self concept and like self-identity, like the stronger sense of self can be like a buffer, or it could help be a protective factor to a lot of like psychological things, disorders or stressors in your life. And then they literally created this artwork to make it just very, I want to say my professor told me it was in the shape, it looks like it could pass as a canoe, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was meant to be like a moon. Because when you encompass all of these things, I mean, right now it's like whatever, the half moon, but it's supposed to be able to make a person full, again, with Mauleona, well-being. The next is a lokahi wheel. This is kind of like a framework. So Kamehameha, I want to say, adapted this or created this from the Lokahi Triangle. If you folks ever heard of the Lokahi Triangle, looking at, which is Native Hawaiian wellness again. So Kamehameha made this wheel to help their students, the faculty, and just anyone, people in the community and their ohana, try to find these different, or have these different dimensions in their life. So we start off like with spiritual soul, friends and family, work and school, thinking and mind, feelings and emotions, and physical body. So starting off with the work school, kuleana, the responsibility, so personal fulfillment at home or school, skills used successfully, such as work or school, and finances in order. And then we move on to thinking, mind, and mana'o, so being creative, and seeing if you're mentally challenged and improving your mind. Then going to feelings, emotions, are you aware? Are you able to identify some of these feelings? And if they may not be so productive, or you find yourself overwhelmed at times, are you able to regulate and manage these feelings once you're able to identify? Then we go into physical body, kino, so physical fitness, nutrition, healthy habits, how you are filling your physical body, and it all ties into, you know, psychological and emotional well-being. Then spiritual, so pili uhane, finding meaning or questioning the universe for the desire to understand and define universal value. I know sometimes spirituality it can be the hardest part because it requires a lot of soul seeking and searching, which I feel like in this day and age is hard because we have a lot of things. We have different hats, we have different roles, but just taking that time to slow things down to allow us to kind of be mindful and have that like meditation kind of hat on so we can better know ourselves and what direction we want to go in. And then friends and family ohana. So having these healthy relationships, community social interactions, and positive connections. And then we have now hopena a'o or ha. These are 6 outcomes to be strengthened in every student over the course of their K to 12, so kindergarten to senior year learning journey. This framework is applied more towards kids, school-based children, teens and adolescents. But I just wanted to put this out there because the DOE, which is interesting, I feel like they're stepping up in a sense where they're trying to incorporate maybe Hawaiian values or local values that can resonate with everyone. So having a sense of belonging, a sense of responsibility, excellence, aloha, total well-being, and knowing where they are in this space in Hawaii. And these are, again, this is a framework that can help with school children and middle high school age children's overall wellness. Okay. Oh, and I'm done. Does any, oh wait, I have one more. I think I skipped Mo'okuauha, which is probably the most important one. Okay, so Mo'okuauha as a methodology, Mo'okuauha translates to, in English, to genealogy. So knowing our past and which can help us in our present and lead towards our future or in our future. So it has 5 different components again, which is apo, acceptance, ho'ololi, transformation, ho'onui, expansion, lokahi, unity, and hopena, conclusion. This was stressed with me with Dr. Mapuana Antonio, who is a professor in public health, and her research is solely on Native Hawaiians and their resiliency. And she's just an amazing professor, but this framework is mostly used for researchers, especially for students who are interested in doing research and even community members. And it helps guide and provides like a new insight on how we can conduct research. Because in the more Western world, the kind of, we all took Psych 212, I think, or other research methods where we would be like, okay, find the scientific research question, look in the literature, what gaps are there, which is fine. Okay, the golden standard would be a RCT, a randomized control trial, and you just randomize, and that's all good. But I think as we're heading towards in a new age, it's important to take in consideration cultural factors, groups that you are going to be working with as with participants or even other researchers. And if you think about it, having a mokuauhau or an indigenous framework that can help guide you through the research process, especially when working with indigenous populations, is like it can make your data more meaningful in a way and more just, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it can become such a meaningful experience than what we're usually taught or used to. So when we talk about apo, acceptance of one another and of our complexities and contradictions as being on this earth is a beautiful place to start. So I'm an example would be me applying this when I was trying to look into domestic violence. Like, how am I accepting this population, this community, this domestic violence community? Am I just going in as a researcher? I mean, like, hey, this is a problem, let's try to fix you folks. Or am I actually asking them questions to help formulate my research questions, or helping me to get on a better idea of how I can be of service, rather than me telling them this is what my expertise is and this is what I can help with your community. And then there's ho'ololi, so looking deep within our na'au, our gut, to make decisions that are pono, correct, right, or balanced, and trusting the guidance of our ancestors in the steps moving forward. So again, this is, I could give an example of maybe trying to figure out what methods I want to use in my research. Like, do I want to use maybe a talk story method where I interview focus groups of children because it resonates more with them? Or, so taking the time to not only look at other research that's already out there, but taking that moment to just like reflect and see what is our bodies telling us, and how can we, again, going back to better serve the community we're working with, or the people. Then we have expansion, ho'onui. So it's like a voyage where it's an understanding, like there's going to be challenges, barriers, especially when we're doing research. We have to, at the end of the day, abide by certain guidelines or principles that are in a Western kind of thinking, or that's a gold standard. So how can we persevere with getting good data and publishing it, so our programs or the populations can get more funding, or whatever the goal is, but just having a realization that research is not always going to be perfect, and to ho'onui and overcome these challenges. Then we have lokahi, unity. So the word that expresses connectedness is mokuauhau. So again, looking back into your past, whether this is talking stories with family members, whether it's taking a break from you collecting data, or you trying to design your research and clearing your mind and using wisdom from maybe your grandma or grandpa, or even a good friend who's an auntie and uncle that can provide some clarity when you're like in a stuck place. And then hopena, your conclusion. So sailing into the future. So this is just, how do you want to be remembered? Like, how do you want your ancestors to be remembered? Or even if you're children, like if you have children, like how would you want them to remember you, and how would you want others in the community to remember them? So it's just, when we talk about any Indigenous or Native Hawaiian frameworks, I'm noticing how a lot of the things is work that you have to do with yourself, and it takes a lot of time, and sometimes you may not get compensated for a lot of the things. But I think for me personally, who has used some of these methods, and who have maybe prayed about things, or who have talked to family members about things, that even if they don't have research experience, but just to get their perspective on things, can really help guide where you want to be in life, and especially in research. Like, it's not always about looking into the literature, trying to publish with the best psychologist or best person in that field. More so, it's about how, for me, it's more about how I can help my community, and how can we like persevere despite a lot of the things we all go through. So yeah, that's kind of it.